Endgames, the desserts of gaming. Don't you hate it when you beat a game and then it just ends? Where's the post-game?
This is what you eat before you eat, to make you more hungry.
We gamers are a spoiled bunch. We gorge ourselves on the main campaign, and if there's nothing to play afterwards, we're just like,
where'd my candy bar go?
It can't be easy to make a 100%ed file worth playing, but some games make it happen, and some even feel like they never end. And today I'm ranking the best of those endings and non-endings, cause I'm Nintendo Dope Man, and these are the Dopest Endgames.
What's your endgame?
Many gamers' first endgame was this sweet little memory. Playing around the castle courtyard, we all noticed a locked cannon and thought, hey, where's that pink guy? 100%ing the great Super Mario 64 by collecting all 120 power stars will quietly open the cage, enabling Mario to blast off onto the rooftop of Peach's castle and find an old friend. Yoshi congratulates Mario on completing his first 3D game by maxing out his life count with 100 lives once there's nothing left to do in the game.
That's like having a bunch of money in the currency of a country that doesn't exist anymore.
This is a common problem with endgames. And then he just jumps off the roof into the waterfall. You know, Mario would have at least appreciated some roof pizza. What former Guantanamo Bay employee thought of this bullshit?
Piece of shit cocksucker asshole.
Hollow Knight is already a torturous challenge, but one achievement challenge given after the first time you beat the game tasks you with fully completing the game a second time without dying once. If you die, the file is locked and you must try again from the start, no matter how far you got. I feel safe assuming that everyone who actually chooses to endure this torture to the end also did a whole lot of this.
So is this here be the banana?
It was hard to pick which country's endgame to give this spot to, but both can be accessed during the main game, and neither can really complete with the final stretch of Donkey Kong Country Returns. After the significant challenge of collecting every puzzle piece in Kong Letter, a golden temple rises from the ground, guarding a luminescent golden banana that, when eaten, transports DK and Diddy to their very own Kirby level made entirely of food. World 9-1 is short and sweet, and it rewards the monkeys with a golden banana mirror to unlock the game's hard mode. Horror games have always possessed a surprising amount of unlockables to keep players coming back to experiences that are understandably less scary after that first time.
Why aren't you freaking out, lad?
I've seen all your tricks.
Silent Hill 3 relieves players with costumes, weapons, and the obligatory nightmare difficulty mode, but one that gets harder each time you beat it. And best of all, it gifts you with something that, for some reason, most horror games didn't feature until Fatal Frame. A health meter that's not total bullcrap.
I'm not scary anymore.
Many older games, and some modern Nintendo games still, have the annoying limitation of not letting you save after the final boss, effectively eliminating any post-game world. Examples include, every fucking Zelda. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door, however, gives us yet another reason to love it the most. After defeating the Shadow Queen, the Paper Plumber is shipped back to Rogueport to meet with all his friends and complete anything left in this massive game. It's a small detail, but one that just makes the world feel more real and lived in. Super Mario World never gets old, and first playing it back in the day, it felt like it never even ends. I remember first thinking the Star World was the secret special bonus world, but when you finish those 5 levels, you take another warp star to another world with 10 of the game's hardest levels.
That's one of them.
And these are the guys that named them.
Well, isn't that special?
The 8th and final world of Kirby and the Forgotten Lands is one I did not see coming. In a dream world created by the main villain, Kirby explores condensed remixes of all the levels from the game, fighting a phantom version of that world's boss after collecting at least 250 of 300 fragments of Leongar's soul. It's just as fun, a nudge more challenging, and pretty trippy yet monotonously chromatic compared to the colorful originals. This final stretch was an excellent extension to Kirby's first 3D adventure, as well as the perfect last addition to Waterloo Town. After beating Luigi's Mansion, players are given the chance to beat it again in a hard mode that also makes the game easier. In the Hidden Mansion, ghosts are twice as powerful, but so is the Poltergust, making it humanly possible to capture that perfect golden frame for every portrait ghost.
So I hear, like, suction and stuff.
As someone who likes to blast through this game in a single night at least once a year, I haven't started a new file in a long, long time. I don't know if this should be considered an endgame or the second half of the game. It's kinda like the story modes of the Sonic Adventure games, but those you can play in any order and at the same time, while in Resident Evil 2, you play through Leon or Claire first, and then once you beat it, you play it again with the other character. The game famously begins with an explosion that splits up the two characters shortly after they first meet. They go their separate ways with the plan to meet back up at the police station, from where they also have slightly separate paths, meeting up a few more times until finally reuniting for good at the end. The second half endgame thingy is made way harder by tougher enemies, including a tyrant, and lets you see and play both characters' overlapping stories and perspectives. A very cool storytelling mechanic, kinda like the Sonic Adventure games. I'm not talking about the hero or dark side because, like I said in the Resi 2 bit, they can be played together. I am, however, talking about the one that unlocks when you finish both modes. You play as all characters making their way into the core of Space Colony X, capped off with a two-pronged boss fight and a very sad ending.
Where is Shadow?
This was as good as 3D Sonic would ever get, and as bad as The Last of Us 2 would get.
Oh my gosh! A floating shopping list!
I said before that horror games often have surprisingly robust post-games, and I'm saying now that Fatal Frame has the best of the bunch. A sound test, battle modes and mission modes, camera functions, chapter selection, the obligatory nightmare mode, and a ghost list to help keep track of and track down every single ghost that needs its picture taken.
I'm not a shopping list. I'm a ghost.
I don't even know where to start this one. When I first played this game, I was like, oh, World Castle must be the last level. Then there was the theme park themed World Bowser, and I was like, oh snap, post game. And then there were 4 other worlds. And I was like, wait, is this the bonus? Worlds Star, Mushroom, Flower, and Crown are the 4 special worlds comprising the post-game of Super Mario 3D World, and they surprised and delighted me just as much as the game they harken back to.
Well, isn't that
I haven't even played Persona 5 yet. I don't even know if I ever will. The only reason I know about its massive endgame and 20-ton content and insane replayability is because I watched Gerard's video on it, and I didn't even finish that.
The Oracle will see you now.
Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons are like the Pokemon duo of Zelda. But did you know
There was another twin.
that there was actually meant to be a third game? Oracle of Secrets, which represents Nehru as the other two represent Din and Farore, was ultimately scrapped and turned into an endgame mission. Once you beat both games, you're given a code that sends him to a dungeon home to the true final boss. It turns out the witches Kome and Kotake, Ganondorf's twin lesbian mothers or whatever, orchestrated the events of both games in order to resurrect their Demon King son. In an epic 3-phase showdown against them, their true form twin Rova, and again in Reborn half-mad, Link must put a true stop to their plans and bring peace to Labrina, Holodrum, and ultimately Hyrule. Link then sails away on a small boat that will lead him to the events of Link's awakening.
Not quite what you were expecting.
I don't even know if some of this qualifies as a post-game, but that seems appropriate for something as obscure as Nier Automata, a game that is very confusingly chopped up. In Route A, you play as 2B, while Route B is the same thing but from 9S's perspective, and Route C is the game's second half mostly playing as A2. There are 26 possible endings, one for each letter of the alphabet. For example, Route T is just removing a character's power cell. However, during the credits for Route D,
I have come to the conclusion that I cannot accept this resolution.
The pod will ask the player,
the destruction of all Yorha units is an essential component of the project plan. Knowing that, do you still wish for them to survive?
You then proceed to destroy the credits in a final shoot-'em-up sequence before the true final ending, which can actually get a bit hard, something you might want to consider when prompted to either save your file or erase it to help some other player beat the credit sequence. Originally, Yoko Taro wanted to only connect people whose countries were in conflict. That is crazy. That is like the anti-post game, and it's brilliant. I would never do it, but it's brilliant. And it all leads up to that implied happy ending we were all hoping for.
A future is not given to you. It is something you must take for yourself.
After beating Ocarina of Time for the first time, players can try to beat it again in something rarely featured in a Zelda game, a hard mode. Master Quest mirrors the map, doubles enemy damage, and gives the dungeons an extreme redesign. Personally, I can't stand this fucking thing, especially the convoluted dungeons. But it's popular among Zelda fans and a novel idea for the series that wasn't revisited until the next game that revolutionized the series just as much. When I kept hearing how awesome and massive and fan-servicing the post-game for Pikmin 4 was, I knew I had to check it out for this video. Saving Captain Olimar, fixing his ship, the new Dondori trials, and everything else. And look, I was already running thin on ideas for this list. Do you know what I had to drop to make room for this one? The Lost World from Donkey Kong Country 2. That's like my 7th or 8th favorite game of all time, and even I know which one has a better post-game.
Spyro the Dragon, you've defeated Ganasty Ganor, collected the dragon eggs, saved all the dragons, and recovered every bit of treasure in the Dragon Kingdom. How do you feel?
Oh yeah!
What the fuck?
How do you make a game worth playing once it's beat? More content. The original lets Spyro loot Nasty Nork's hoard in a large level with 2,000 gems and full flying ability. Ripto's Rage sent him off to his initially intended destination, Dragon Shores, an amusement park filled with minigames that, when completed, grant access to the Supercharged Flame power-up. And Year of the Dragon opens up Super Bonus Round, which contains 5,000 gems and the final dragon egg. Insomniac did Endgames right with Spyro the Dragon.
I want my dragon! So this guy collects living beings?
Yeah, you know, you'll get it when you're still actively dating in your 40s.
The Pokédex is not just the post-game, it's the whole game. At the start of every Pokemon game, you're given an empty encyclopedia to fill by catching them all. After finishing the main game by beating all 8 regional gyms and the Elite Four, you must become a true Pokemon Master? By filling out the entire dex. Scoop up the basic ones, conquer the legendaries and mythicals, and evolve them all in a myriad of ways. It's kind of fucked up, imprisoning a bunch of wild animals, most of whom you're never going to utilize in battle. But there's something about this magical monster menagerie that never gets old. The National Dex scandal proved that. Animal Crossing literally never ends, so that makes for one mother of a post-game. You get to a point where you just check your town once a day, improving it little by little, celebrating the annual events, and collecting and crafting every single thing there is to have. In a weird way, the post-game of an Animal Crossing game is the main part because that's the part that never ends as long as you want it. But as for that gamey first part of the game, the progress of your island paradise is charted by Tom Nook's ranking system, where you climb to the coveted 3-star rating in a 5-star system. After at least 8 villagers and tons of development and scenery, the money-hungry Tanuki eventually surrenders that coveted ranking, and 3 important things happen. You get to try going for 4 and 5-star ranks, and he adds the Island Designer app to the Nook machine, unlocking terraforming and full customization of your island. Part of this is super annoying because why would you lock one of the game's biggest mechanics behind an objective you would ideally want to use that mechanic for? But I guess that naturally makes it one mother of a post-game. And in a final massive update, detailed in a final massive direct, New Horizons added a massive amount of more content. In addition to more stuff, more improvements, and cooking, the 3DS game Happy Home Designer was basically rolled up into a little ball and stuffed inside New Horizons DLC to make sure that we don't need a new Animal Crossing game for a long, long time.
But the street parking wasn't that great. 2.5 stars.
So you're gonna A, listen to some 50 grand a year pension hunter, or B, a billionaire, who even the president lets finger his wife, or C, try and be really stupid and save those 2 idiot mentors of yours and have everybody in the goddamn state crawling up your ass. A, B, or C. Time's ticking, pal. Beep, beep, beep. And your answer is...
Of course, the GTA series always has a fat post-game. By today's standards, 3 and Vice City are okay, 4 is riveting yet depressing, so the showdown is between 5 and San Andreas. San Andreas is my favorite entry, so you know I'm not being biased when I say... There's 3 outcomes depending on what choice you make as Franklin for the final mission.
I pick C. Ain't that a bitch?
And then there's all the leftover missions, collectibles, and encounters made much easier by the newly acquired fortune. All 3 characters can still hang out with each other and supporting characters. Something I wish CJ could do with Sweet, Caesar, and Woozy.
As friends. Do I have a choice? No, not really.
Is there anything you don't like shooting, Paul?
Well, I ain't met the thing yet, but as soon as I do, I'll let you know. You can even put it in one of them books you read.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Today, John Marston stopped shooting.
Both Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2 have very unique, strange, bittersweet post-games. In the original game, you play as John Marston, until he earns his redemption by sacrificing himself for his family in the final story mission. His death shifts player control to his son, Jack Marston, who fills in his father's shoes for every remaining completion percentage point, including gunning down the man who killed his dad in a final showdown as epic as you'd expect from a classic western.
You killed my father.
Your father killed himself with the life he lived.
In the prequel, you play as Arthur Morgan, who was spoken of a lot in the original, until he dies at the tail end of the game, leaving you to control Mr. John Marston. It's the sort of risk taken by very few other games, like The Last of Us 2, but this one just hits so damn hard. I nearly gave this one the top spot because I love it. Earthbound is an emotional roller coaster. It's happy and sad, funny and deep, light and dark. After the long and winding adventure, when Ness and friends finally vanquish the evil alien Gygus, after being told they may not ever return to their mortal coils, they appeared, bound to the earth. After exchanging some last words, Pooh goes back to Dalam, leaving you to wonder, was that dude even real? Jeff stays with his neglectful scientist father, and Ness is left to wander the earth with Paula. Retracing all your giant steps, soaking in the ultimate state of the world, hunting down as many of the characters, and in turn, Itoi's brilliantly written last words. There's no enemies, no objectives, just this song that plays on loop the whole time, no matter where in the world you are, traveling the whole thing all over again. When you try to call your dad to save the game, he says he can no longer do that because he wants to be home in time for Ness's birthday, forcing your final save to lie just before the final boss. You know, like every fucking Zelda. This means you have to appreciate it all in that moment before going back home and before turning off your Super Nintendo. Unless you're playing on the Virtual Console. Whenever you're ready, you exchange a bittersweet goodbye with Paula when dropping her off home, before finally returning to the small house where your life in this profound little game all started. Talk to your mom, roll one of the only double credit sequences you'll ever want to sit through, and speculate on one last scene foreshadowing Mother 3. It all just hits so hard. No game, even half as deep as Earthbound, has offered as much closure, and that's what makes it one of the dopest endgames. It's been a long time since that old rooftop pizza, and the post-games for Sunshine and both Galaxies weren't even as good as that. But Super Mario Odyssey. Exploring the kingdoms of Super Mario's Super World, you will likely cross paths with a mysterious silvery metallic cube in each one, ominously situated like the monoliths from 2001: A Space Odyssey. While after defeating Bowser on the moon and saving Peach in time for her own globe-trotting vacay, Mario can revisit all of them, find the blocks, and ground pound them to release a bunch more moons for that level, adding to a grand total of 999 power moons. But it doesn't end there. After exploring this planet full of kingdoms, if Nintendo asked what should be the last kingdom, the Endgame Kingdom, any real Mario fan would have jumped out of a pipe to say,
mushroom, of course!
Peach's castle in a big park-like setting, with the usual Mario game biome surrounding it as opposed to the homogeneous background surrounding the other kingdoms. One of the best levels in the game that also comes with Toadette's insane achievement list. It's the Mushroom fucking Kingdom. This is fan service at its finest. But it doesn't even end there. There's also the dark and darker sides of the moon. Two final endgame gauntlets that put all your combat and platforming skills to the test. It's the mystery, the build-up, the Mushroom Kingdom, and the load of extra content that makes this one of the dopest endgames. This right here is how you do a post-game. After a grand adventure through the Johto region, collecting all 8 gym badges and defeating the revived remnants of Team Rocket, you are told to head east of your hometown to find and challenge the Elite Four. And just as we felt like we were about to fall off the edge of the world, we were told to check our maps to find ourselves in some familiar territory. I still remember how blown my mind was when first laying eyes on this. A map of Kanto, the region from the first games, revealing itself as the eastern neighbor of Johto. So you plow through Victory Road, beat the Elite Four, and are rewarded with a ticket to an old familiar ship called the SS Anne, destined for Kanto. Caught in the middle of that brief period of Pokemania, Gen 2 had a lot to live up to, namely Gen 1. Its solution? Just include the whole frickin' thing. Taking place 3 years later, this very lengthy post-game has you exploring the slightly changed region, collecting those 8 original gym badges, taking on different quests and stories and rewards and battles, finally cooling out your weirdo, douchebag, legit criminally abusive rival, and meeting the 2 original Gen 1 characters. Blue, the rival who replaced Giovanni as Viridian gym leader, and Red, the former player character who waits atop Mount Silver for a worthy opponent. So just to recap, the game is essentially doubled in size and value through a literal nostalgia trip where you explore the original game setting 3 years later and face your original self. No other Pokemon game or video game that I can think of has done something like this. And it was only Gen 2, and this insane amount of nostalgia and value is what makes going back to Kanto the dopest endgame of all time. Years of watching Gerard complete games has prepared me for this video. I've 100%ed maybe like 60% of my games, but there's some that can just get fucked. Just like without side quests, a great campaign can still feel a bit hollow without some good endgame. So sub to the channel, hit the like button, and hit up the comments with the best endgames that made you feel like this.
Can't believe it's all over. What do we do now? What do you mean? Now we can finally play the game.